Sputnik, a horror science fiction fantasy directed by Egor Abramenko. He also directed a short film in 2017 called The Passenger that follows the same premise of this film. My guess is that he wanted to go for a feature-length runtime after originally receiving praise for the short film. So Sputnik is about a controversial young doctor named Tatiana who goes to a secluded research facility to examine a cosmonaut who has just returned to Earth with an alien parasite. And a cosmonaut is just a Russian astronaut, by the way. And FYI, this film is completely subtitled, and I don't think there's currently any plans for an English dub to my knowledge, if anyone's curious. So there is a little history I wanted to get into about Sputnik before we get into the review, just to add a little more substance to the review, I guess. Just some information that's added, real facts about the history of Sputnik. So the word Sputnik is Russian for companion or spouse. It is also the name applied to certain spacecrafts launched under the Soviet space program back in the late 50s. The Sputnik program was the world's first successful space program to launch a rocket, a living being, and a human into Earth's orbit. Now, this isn't probably going to make much sense right now based off my current review, but when you watch the film, it might add a little substance to it because you'll have that in mind while watching it. I didn't know these things while I was watching it, so I just wanted to throw that in the review for anybody who's also just curious about all of that and you think it's all fictional, you know. But with all of that foundation and fun facts laid out, let's talk about the film. Sputnik has some fairly good performances, especially from the lead who portrays Tatiana. My only qualm with watching a complete subtitled film is that sometimes it's hard to feel the emotion and really immerse myself into a film when I have to focus on the written dialogue. I'm just forced to break contact with the characters' facial expressions a lot throughout the film, and it starts to feel like a visual balancing act to me. But it is what it is, you know, maybe it's just me. I'm just saying that this element may have affected my experience, but I still enjoyed the film. Also, on another note, you could just tell from the initial visual representation that the movie has a pretty decent budget. There's some scenes in the film where you get to see some close-ups of this parasitic creature, and I was honestly very impressed with the quality of the CGI. And this is mainly because this film caught me off guard. I mean, I had no clue that it was coming out. I didn't really see any marketing or trailers for it. It just kind of popped up on video on demand for me. So yeah, it's overall a very well shot movie. It has the right amount of low light in certain frames, and it doesn't do that thing movies and shows tend to do where they're filming a darker scene but it's much too dark for you to keep up with what's happening during action scenes. And no one likes that, right? Like, you don't want to sit there trying to watch a movie and it gets super dark and you just hear all this yelling and, you know, gunshots going off and you can't see anything but like flashes, and that's if you're lucky, you know. So yeah, it doesn't do that at all, which is great. So with that said, my only real qualm with Sputnik was their attempts to make you care about the main characters. They didn't really feel much like an attempt at all to me. Everything feels bland, and our main character really cares about the well-being of the cosmonaut, and that comes across very clear on screen from her perspective. Even the cosmonaut had a very strong exposition throughout the movie that becomes much more established later on to get across his emotional life battles. But I didn't care. I don't know, maybe I'm heartless, but I didn't feel the sorrow within the characters, although I did acknowledge it because it plays a pretty big role throughout the climax and the resolution of the storyline. So I'm giving Sputnik a 7.5 out of 10. It was a decent film. It held my interest practically the whole runtime because you're mainly curious to stick around to see how this all turns out, but not necessarily because it's so good that you can't look away. It's mainly just the fact that the cosmonaut is in a pretty fucked up situation and you want to see as a viewer what's going to happen to him or if they're even going to get out of this situation. So that's it for my review of Sputnik. Also, I wanted to point out that I did modify my grading scale because I felt like I needed a wider spectrum to work with when it comes to reviewing movies. I don't have an official grading rubric or anything. Once you've seen like hundreds of movies and done a little research on the basic ingredients of a story, you kind of develop your own mental checklist. But there you have it. Feel free to leave a comment down below on your thoughts on the film if you've seen it, or if this review has helped you make a decision on whether or not if you wanted to check it out. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe.